So last time we talked about elasticity and also the relationship between the pricing strategy and the importance of revenue to the firm, and we show you on the diagram. So let us have a brief review. Okay, first of all, we talk about elasticity. It can be greater than 1, equal to 1, or less than 1. And this information is very important to your business strategy, because if you are a businessman want to increase your revenue, and sometimes, of course, your profits, how are you going to work out? So we use geometry. Here is the price. Here is the, here is the quantity. Here's the price. Okay, let's check. If this point A is at the middle of this demand curve, what is the price elasticity of demand? If this point A is located at the midpoint of the demand curve, what is the price elasticity of A? Equals to what? Right. Because this time we show you on the chart, right? The elasticity is this section divided by this section. Okay, and we show you by geometry that, so as you can see, as this point moves upward, the price gets higher and the price elasticity of demand will become higher too, right? So here, the price elasticity of demand is definitely larger than 1. And if this is the case, and let us see, if we decrease the price, what will happen? So because of the price decrease, this part is the revenue you missed, right? Because the price goes down. This is the revenue you have to forego. You can no longer keep it. But you get extra, right? Here is the extra. So which one is larger? 1 So when you look at this chart, right? So when the product, it has very high price elasticity of demand, and if you decrease the price, right, from here to here, right? So what you get? Your revenue increase or decrease? Total revenue. So what is total revenue? Total revenue, we call it TR, right? Okay? And TR is equal to P times Q. So if the product itself is very elastic, it means the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1. So what happened? You decrease the price. Here is the revenue that is gone. But now, so here it is, let us say P1, Q1, right? And here is P2, Q2. So can you tell me what's the relationship TR1, TR2? So that's P1 times Q1 and P2 times Q2. Okay. Okay. So this one is greater than that one. And now we're going to show you, I'm going to show you by calculus. How many of you have taken calculus? Most of you, right? Okay, probably Taiwanese. Have you taken calculus? What is calculus? Hong Kai-Xuan, what is calculus? Excuse me? Yes. So have you taken it? No. Anyway, so calculus, there are two parts. The first part is differentiation. The second part is integration. For differentiation, we are trying to look at the relationship between two variables. Okay, so here it is total revenue, right? And now we are looking at the relationship of total revenue with respect to P, that's price. So we have DTR, DP. Okay? Questions? And so here it is P times Q, D, and then DP. Okay? And there's a rule called product rule. So if we have dx f times g, what would that be? 中国超. If we differentiate a function, but its function consists of two functions, f times g. So we're going to differentiate that. What happened?
先把 f 微分，然后乘上前面先微分，乘上后面不微，再加上前面不要微分，后面微分。
Okay, great. So that's f prime g plus f g prime. Okay. So here, dp and q, right? P is a function, q is also a function. So we have differentiate with respect to p first. So here is 1. Okay, sorry. Okay, right. So here's 1, right? F prime. And then times q plus. Okay, here you have p and then differentiate this with respect to p. So this is what you get. And we factor out q. Okay, so q is out, and here is dq, dp, and then q. Okay, so to this point, any questions? Any questions to this point? Okay, so it is kind of interesting in economics. You always want to manipulate the whole formula. And can anyone tell me what is this? What is this? Excuse me? Are you sure? 谢新佑 not here. 郑怡玲 what is this? Chiu Guangming want to say something? What is this? Chen Jianyun, what is this? Lin Yuxiang, what is this? Excuse me? Exactly, price elasticity of demand, right? So here it is Q plus, minus. Here is exactly elasticity, right? So why I put a minus here? Because we know that price elasticity of demand is negative, right? And so I put an absolute value here and a negative here, right? So you can see if this is greater than 0, right? It means P and TR, If it is greater than 0, means P goes up, TR also goes up, right? Because it goes up, it's positive, right? But if, so here, what does that mean? That means when the elasticity is less than 1, right? If it is less than 1, they move in the same direction, okay? But if it is less than 0, so if dp, dtr less than 0, it means this is greater than 1. So when P goes up, TR goes down, and P goes down, TR goes up, right? So this is another way to show you the relationship between P and total revenue. So if you are a businessman, right? If you really want to make money out of it, so how are you going to deal with it? First of all, you need to know what's the price elasticity of demand of your product, okay? So we show you in two ways. The first one, geometry. The second one, calculus, differentiation. Any questions? Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about another concept called consumer surplus. So what is consumer surplus? Consumer surplus is the difference between the actual price you pay and the price you are willing to pay. Okay, let me repeat this again, and then I'll give you an example to tell you what is consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the price you pay and the difference with what you actually pay. So suppose we have a demand and supply function looks like this. So we have P1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? And then we have quantity supply. As you can see, supply, the law of supply means tell you that if the price goes up, you supply more. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we have quantity demanded. Okay, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So if you look at this kind of table, and you can tell, because we say in equilibrium, price supply is equal to quantity demanded, right? So at this point, okay, when price is equal to 1, okay, when price is equal to 1, the quantity supply is 5, and the quantity demanded is also 5. So at this point, we have market equilibrium. So then you're going to say the equilibrium price is equal to 5, and then the equilibrium quantity is equal to 5. Okay, to this point, any questions? And now we want to get to consumer surplus. If consumer has a concept on whatever they can get out of this transaction, the same thing will apply to producer. So we have consumer surplus and producer surplus. So now let's try to look at consumer surplus first. So if you're going to look at consumer surplus, we'll look at demand, right? Okay? So you look at this. When the quantity is very small, there's only one, right? So because there's only one, and so the consumers treasure this very much. So at this quantity, as a matter of fact, consumer would like to pay $9, okay? And what happened? He actually paid $5, right? So here, okay? So, sorry, I should mark here. Okay, so when there's only one, the consumer treasures this quantity very much, okay, because his marginal utility is very high. So he would like to pay $9. But because the market equilibrium is equal to 5, the price, okay, so actually he pays only $5. So as I tell you the definition of consumer surplus, the amount you actually want to pay. And so you actually want to pay $9. But what you actually pay? You actually pay $5, right? So here, the consumer surplus is equal to $4. Okay? What about the second unit? The second unit, because you get more goods, so marginal utility goes down. So your willingness to pay goes down. So your willingness to pay now is $8, right? But how much does he actually pay? He actually paid $5. So this is the second unit of the consumer surplus. So this is equal to $3. And as we move on, when the volume goes up, his willingness to pay goes down. So marginal utility tells him that I'm no longer that satisfied. So at this point, I'm willing to pay $7, but he actually paid $5, right? So, sorry, missing space. So it is 7 minus 5, right? And here again, 6 minus 5, so it's equal to 1. At this unit, okay, at the fifth unit, he is willing to pay 5, and he actually pays 5. So here, the consumer surplus is equal to 0. Okay? Now we get to the producer surplus. Okay, producer surplus. The direction is a little bit different, but the reasoning is the same. So we are talking about producer surplus now. Producer surplus. So it is the amount the producer is willing to accept and what he actually gets paid. Okay? The amount he's willing to accept and the amount he actually gets. So here, when it is 1 unit, right? He is willing to get $1. But how much does he get? He gets 5, right? When it gets to the second unit, he is willing to get $2, but he actually gets 5. So 5 minus 1 plus here 5 minus 2, and here again, right? He's willing to take $3, but actually gets 5. 5 minus 3. And here again, 5 minus 4. So this is the producer surplus you get. Okay? This is one way to calculate it. But generally in the exam, I'm going to give you a So in the exam, I'm going to give you a demand function and supply function. So if we look at this, can anyone tell me what would be a guess for the demand function and the supply function, right? Here, P equals to 1, Q equals to 1, right? P equals to 2, Q equals to 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. So what you get? The supply function would be P equals Q, right? What about here? You look at it, P, Q, right? What you get? You get, for demand function, P plus Q equals 10. Questions? Okay, and so we solve for it, right? So here, because P is equal to Q, and so Q plus Q equals to 10, so you get Q is equal to 5, and of course, price will be equal to 5. And this is one way to calculate producer surplus or consumer surplus. If it is discrete. Discrete means it is integer, okay, integer. But sometimes we try to look at it through continuous. So we calculate an area. So let us say we have supply looks like this, and we have demand looks like this. So here is 10, here is 10, here is 5. So if we want to calculate consumer surplus, it is this area, right? So the height is phi, the base is also phi. So it is phi times 1/2 because it is an area of a triangle, okay? So it is equal to 25/2. And the same thing here. So here is phi, here is phi times 1/2. So 25/2. So there are two ways to calculate consumer surplus and producer surplus. Here, you count it unit by unit. Okay, you count it unit by unit. Here, you calculate the area of a triangle. Okay, the area of a triangle. Questions? Okay, we're gonna move briefly to a new chapter, and then we will discuss the homework. I think everyone is concerned about homework, so actually we'll discuss in class. And I think the due date is next week, is that right? The due date is next week. Yes, okay. We will discuss the homework in class, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, what's the new chapter? The new chapter is a different way to look at consumer choices. So in this chapter, we give you a supply function and demand function. You calculate it and try to find out what is the equilibrium. And you get how much consumer get and how much consumer pay. And here, for the new chapter, it is a chapter on consumer theories. You know, what's the behavior of consumers? So first of all, we have a budget. Because how much you're going to pay depends on how much you have, right? And so how much you're going to choose, you know, for good A, B, C, whatever, it also depends on how much you have. So this is a important information that you should have. And then from the budget, right, we can calculate how much you're going to get for each kind of good, okay? But then, something missing. Because if you just have budget, we need to know what you like, right? So it is called preference. And for preference, we're going to deal with it by indifference curve. If you check the book, you have utility function, and basically we don't want to deal with it. And I don't have any intention to introduce this part with calculus. Okay, but you know, the book is there. If you want to look at it, you can do it. Okay, budget line. Of course, we have so many goods you can consume, right? So we assume you have goods X and goods Y, okay? And this is something you are quite familiar in junior high mathematics classes. Okay. And if we're going to put it down, what does it look like? It looks like this: Px times X plus Py times Y is equal to, sometimes we use I, sometimes we use M. Okay, so I is your income, M also means your income. Okay, so I think the book uses M. Okay, so how does it look like? It looks like this. This budget line actually also called price line. So this budget line also calls price line. Why? Because it tells you about the price. The first question is, you consume more than 2 goods, right? So why just 2? Because with 2 goods, it's easier to elaborate with diagrams. Okay? So we assume you only consume 2 goods. And let us see, how does it work? So first of all, if we say there's a point A here, and here is point B, and here is point C, okay? Apparently, the consumer if he wants to maximize his utility, he got to spend it all, right? And so the best thing this person can do is to have all the consumption bundles. Okay, we call bundle. Bundle means a group of goods, but actually we only have two. But you can have many varieties. For example, if you consume at this point, let's call it M, right? And here call it N. If you consume at M, what does that mean? You consume nothing, X. No X at all, right? So in this case, how much of the Y you can buy? It is equal to M divided by PY, right? Because no X. So this is the amount of Y you can buy. And N, the same thing. So M divided by PX. So no Y, right? So this is the amount of X you will consume. Okay. So A is sometimes we call inefficient because if you are a rational person, you want to maximize your utility, right? So you won't do this. If you want to buy, it actually should be here. This is the frontier where you buy. What about point C? It is beyond your reach because, of course, the more the better, right? But here, can you buy it? No, you don't have the money. Okay. Questions? So now we're going to see how this line going to change and why it is called price line. And actually, there are only one tip. And listen carefully. So let us say price of X increase. Okay? Price of X increase, what happened? You can buy more X or less. You buy less, right? Okay? But suppose PX goes down, what happened? You can buy more of X. Okay, so very careful here. If price of X increases, okay, if PX increases, what happened? This line becomes steeper, okay? Steeper, right? Udongye, what is steeper? Excuse me? Yes, okay. So it's very easy to tell. If it is steeper, means X is more expensive, okay? If it is steeper, X is more expensive. If it is flatter, right? Flatter. If it is flatter means X is cheaper. So because of this, we say it is a price line. Because this budget line also tells you what's the price. If it is steeper, X is more expensive. If it is flatter, X is it is cheaper. The same thing here, okay? So if you look at this, okay, X, Y. Okay, when you draw a chart, okay, when you draw a diagram, you got to be careful what changes. We used to discuss supply and demand, right? Supply and demand, here is Q, right? Here is P. But what about now? We are talking about consumer choices. Okay, consumer choices, so here is a good X. It is also a good Y. Okay, good X and good Y is no longer Q and P. Okay, don't mistake for it. And the same thing here. So we have a budget line, but now we talk about price changes of Y. If Y becomes cheaper, right? If Y becomes cheaper means relatively X becomes more expensive, right? So it becomes steeper. And if Y becomes more expensive, that means relatively X becomes cheaper. So it is here. So when X becomes cheaper, it's flatter. When X becomes more expensive, it becomes steeper. Okay? The opposite for y. When y becomes cheaper, it becomes more steeper, right? It becomes steeper. And when y becomes